Yo, it's Elut. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a branded ruling quiz. This is important for all players, branded players, because you should know what your cards do and how they work. And if you're playing against branded, this will help you too. So we're going to have 10 questions here. Some will be softballs that I hope that everybody gets right the first time. Some will build off of those easy questions in a little bit more complicated scenarios. And some are just so important and not talked about enough that I'm using this as a teaching opportunity. So, out of the 10 questions, let me know in the comments how you did. Hopefully you got them all right because you are a very big-brained individual. So to start, we're going to begin with a lot of the targeted negation kinds of cards. Things like imperms, things like veilers, etc., etc. Zones won't really matter here. We're just going to use our Stratos die as like the field center so that I have a little bit more space. And then the last note is if I say you, I'm speaking from the perspective of the branded player. And if I say the opponent or your opponent, I'm speaking from the not branded player's perspective. So here we go. You control, in question 1 of this quiz, a Cartesia. That's great. On your turn, you normal summon Elut and activate his effect to search a branded spell trap as Chainlink 1. Your opponent responds with an imperm from the hand, targeting Elut. You, the branded player, as Chainlink 3, activate Cartesia to fusion summon. Cartesia resolves as Chainlink 3, fuses herself and Elut away, to make Yugioh. The question here is, does imperm resolve on Elut, and does Elut get the search effect? 3, 2, 1. If you said Elut still gets the search for branded fusion, you are correct. Imperm at resolution, Chainlink 2 has lost its target, so Elut resolves successfully. That's an easy one. I think everyone should already know how that works, but just in case you didn't, don't feel bad. It's fine, you know now. Okay, a similar scenario, but let's say you control Cartesia and your opponent has 2 set cards in their back row. You, again, on your turn, normal summon Elut, activate his effect as Chainlink 1 to search a branded spell trap. Your opponent responds, Chainlink 2, imperm, target Elut. You, the branded player, respond Chainlink 3, Cartesia, to fuse Elut away. Your opponent responds Chainlink 4, a second set imperm, also targeting Elut. So they are both targeting Elut here. This chain resolves. Imperm negates Elut on field until the end of the turn. Chainlink 3 resolves. Cartesia, she fuses herself and Elut away for Yugioh. Chainlink 2, imperm, has lost its legal target, so it fizzles. That one doesn't matter. And then we come back to Chainlink 1, Elut, to search branded fusion. The question here is, does Elut get the search in this scenario? You have 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. If you said, yes, of course, Elut still gets to search branded fusion because it's not on the field anymore. You are wrong. And I'll tell you why you're wrong. The reason Elut does not get the search effect here is because this imperm already resolved successfully. Elut's effect was activated face up on field, and he was negated successfully face up on field. The effect will resolve where it was activated, and since imperm did successfully resolve, Elut will not get the search even though it is no longer on the field. That is different than the previous example, because in the previous example, by the time the one imperm resolved, Elut was no longer on field for it to resolve. It cannot negate a card it no longer sees on resolution. But the second imperm here was able to do that. So even though Elut was moved, he will not get the search here. Okay. Now, question number 3. It is your turn. You are the branded player, it is your turn. You normal summon Elut, activate his effect to search. Your opponent responds with an imperm from the hand, targeting Elut. You, the branded player, respond to Chainlink 3 with a Book of Eclipse. So, this chain resolves, Book of Eclipse, Chainlink 3, flips Aluber face down defense. Chainlink 2, imperm. Here's the question, does imperm negate Aluber anymore? You have 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1. If you said Aluber still gets the search effect here, you are correct. Imperm at resolution has lost its face-up target. So, you will still get the search from Aluber. Very cool, very cool. And then we're going to go to a similar example as before. Your opponent controls 2 set back rows, and you normal summon Aluber on your turn to search. Chainlink 2, your opponent responds with an imperm targeting Aluber. You respond, Chainlink 3, Book of Eclipse. Your opponent again responds, Chainlink 4, targeting Aluber again. Okay, so the question here is Chainlink 1, 2, 3, 4. Does Aluber get the search here? You have 3 seconds, 3, 2, 1. If you said, yes, Aluber still gets the search here, you're actually correct. And this is how the chain resolves. So Chainlink 4 imperm will target Aluber and successfully negate him until the end of the turn. Chainlink 3 Book of Eclipse will now resolve, flipping Aluber to face down defense. Chainlink 2 imperm has lost its target, so this one does not matter. And when it gets back to Aluber, Aluber is no longer negated by imperm, and it's not because, you know, he left the field or dodged it before it resolved. But the thing is, you cannot apply a lingering effect to a face-down monster. It's kind of a similar thing with a card like Skill Drain. What imperm does, if you think about it, is very different from a card like Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom negates a specific effect in response. Not all of the card's effects necessarily, but just the one effect that you are activating, Ash will negate that one effect. Imperm will negate Aluber's effects, but really what it does is it's not responding to a specific effect, it is applying a lingering effect for the rest of the turn. So even if this imperm was successful in resolving and negating Aluber, by the time Aluber resolves, it has been flipped face down by Book of Eclipse, and you cannot any longer apply the lingering effect. So Aluber will search Branded Fusion here. That's actually kind of cool. This would also work with Book of Moon, you know, same sort of thing there. But you cannot apply lingering effects on face-down monsters. So that's actually pretty cool. So, yeah, hope you're doing well so far. And then we're gonna get into some other stuff here next. Okay, so this next one also should be pretty easy, but just in case you don't know it, I'm gonna go over it really fast. You control Branded Lost on your field, and you activate Branded Fusion. Your opponent responds with the dreaded Ash Blossom. Branded player says, you can't negate my Branded Fusion. I have Branded Lost. Branded Lost says the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Opponent says, you're an idiot. Of course I can Ash that. Who is correct? 3, 2, 1. If you said Ash will still negate Branded Fusion under Branded Lost, you are correct. Ash Blossom negates the effect of a card that would send something to the graveyard, not the activation. So Branded Lost will not protect you from Ash Blossom. That one should be super, super easy. I really hope nobody got that wrong. Moving on to example number 2 involving Branded Lost. So you still control a Branded Lost on your field. Your opponent controls Sword Soul Changying. You have a Fallen of Albaz and a Cartesia in your graveyard. You then, on your turn, activate Branded in White. Because you are using Albaz as fusion material, you can banish materials from your graveyard for Branded in White. So your opponent has no response to that. You resolve Branded in White. You banish from your graveyard Albaz and Cartesia in order to make Sanctifier. Branded in White has resolved, it goes to the graveyard. Chainlink 1, you activate Branded Lost because you fusion summoned. Your opponent says, Okay, chain link to Cheng Ying. Because a card was banished, I will now banish a card from your field and your graveyard. It does not target. Branded player says, you can't do that. I'm protected under Branded Lost. You can't activate effects here. Sword Soul player says, shut up. Yes, I can. Who is correct? 3, 2, 1. If you said the branded player is correct, Sword Soul Cheng Ying cannot be activated here, you are right. Because Chainlink 1 previously was the fusion summon of a monster, using a card that involves an effect that fusion summons, our opponent cannot respond to us here. They cannot activate trigger effects, quick effects, nothing. So we get the Branded Lost Search immediately. They cannot activate anything on top of that chain. That one is also fairly easy, I would say. I think that's fairly easy. Okay. Now, another Branded Lost example. We still control a Branded Lost. We'll put that to the side. But on our turn, we set our Fusion Duplication because we got ashed, let's say. And our Branded Fusion is in the graveyard. All right. We pass to our opponent, and it is in their draw phase. They say, do you have anything in the draw phase? Yeah, I think I will do something in the draw phase, actually. I will Fusion Duplication, targeting Branded Fusion. Opponent says, that's fine. No response. We banish the Branded Fusion and resolve it via Fusion Duplication. So, we send to the graveyard Despian Tragedy, and we also send our Albaz to go into Lubellion here. And then here we go, Lubellion, we'll pitch a card, we'll pitch Cartesia. We'll go Chainlink 2 Branded Lost because we did Fusion Summon. And Chainlink 3 Tragedy to search a Despia to our hand, whatever. Our opponent responds here with a Forbidden Droplet, and they send a Super Poly from their hand, whatever. It doesn't really matter what they discard. They just discard something from their hand, one card for Forbidden Droplet. Branded player says, whoa, 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 you can't respond here. The last thing that happened previously was Fusion Duplication, and I Fusion Summoned Lubellion. I'm protected under Branded Lost. Opponent says, no you can't, you moron. Who is correct? 3, 2, 1. The opponent is correct here. I've made a whole video going over this specific ruling, but Fusion Duplication, even though it resolved as Chainlink 1 and caused a fusion summon of a monster, Fusion Duplication does not explicitly state that it is causing a fusion summon. And Branded Lost reads, the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. Lubellion was fusion summoned here as, resolving as Chainlink 1. But Lubellion was not fusion summoned by a card that says it is fusion summoning. Therefore, you can activate Lost's search effect, but your opponent can still respond with Forbidden Droplet, and Lubellion will die on the field. So, long story short, Fusion Dupe is not protected under Branded Lost on the activation or on the resolution. So keep that in mind. That's a pretty big ruling to know. Okay, so for this next one, it's going to be another Fusion Duplication question. Let's say you have a set Fusion Duplication on your field. We'll just leave it face down there for now. And you also have a Super Poly in your graveyard. Your opponent has begun their turn. They have moved to the main phase. They normal summon Moye and reveal a Shuna in their hand in order to make a level 4 water tuner token. No response. That's fine. They make their token. Now, on resolution of that chain, you, the branded player, activate Fusion Duplication, targeting Super Poly. You have no cards in your hand. Opponent says, okay, discard for Super Poly. Branded player says, I don't have to discard. Sword Soul player says, what the hell are you talking about? You're copying Super Poly, right? You have to discard. If you can't discard, you can't target Super Poly with Fusion Dupe. Who's correct? You have 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The branded player is correct here. Fusion duplication copies the effect of Super Poly. It does not copy the cost of discarding a card, and it also does not copy conditions such as neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. So you don't get the Super Poly protection or anything like that. You don't have to discard for cost. Fusion Dupe will banish Super Poly, fuse these two away for a Garura. And that's kind of funny. So yeah, the branded player is right here. Fusion Dupe does not copy the cost of a card. Another similar example is, like I said, it doesn't copy like conditions of the card. So you could technically, if you had Fusion Duplication set from a previous turn, you can actually activate Branded Fusion, resolve it, make something, and then Fusion Dupe Branded Fusion and do Branded Fusion again to make something else. Even though Branded Fusion says you can only activate it once per turn, Fusion Dupe doesn't care about that. It's just copying its effect. So you can actually Branded Fuse twice in one turn, technically, if you have it set up in a weird way like that. That is a possibility. So kind of a cool thing with Fusion Dupe. It does not protect you under Lost, as we've said previously, but it also doesn't copy some other weird stuff, which is kind of cool, actually. That's kind of cool. Yeah, Sword Soul players are getting wrecked this video. Okay, so the last two questions in this quiz are going to be involving some Mirror Jade rollings. These will definitely come up sometimes, so yeah, hope you're paying attention. The first one is you have fusion summoned into Mirror Jade from one thing or another. Eventually you got to a Mirror Jade. It is your turn. Your opponent controls a Sword Soul Chengying. Just think of him as a 3k beater, same as Mirror Jade. His effects don't matter for this example. And they also control a Psychic End Punisher. For the sake of the example, we're going to assume that your opponent has less life points than you. So Psychic End Punisher is unaffected by your activated effects. So for example, if you activated Mirror Jade here and you attempted to banish Pep, it would not do anything. You would send to the grave, sure, but it would not banish Psychic End Punisher as long as your opponent has less life than you. We're also going to assume for this example that Psychic End Punisher has 30,000 attack. So we can't just attack into it and make it affected by our effects again. So here's the situation. We, on our turn with Mirror Jade, go to the battle phase. We attack our 3k Mirror Jade into their 3k Chengying because we don't want to OTK ourselves into the Psychic End Punisher. These two attack each other, they crash, and they die. Mirror Jade then activates in the graveyard. Since the fusion summoned Mirror Jade left the field by an opponent's card, we will Raigeki our opponent's board on the end phase. Opponent says, okay, whatever, I'm not stressed about that. I only have Pep out, I'm not worried. So we move to the end phase now. On the end phase, we attempt to resolve our Mirror Jade. Our opponent says, that's fine, but Psychic End Punisher's unaffected by activated effects. I have less life points than you. He will not be destroyed by Mirror Jade. Branded player says, I got bad news, bro. That Pep is dead. Who's correct? 3, 2, 1. If you said the branded player is correct, and Psychic End Punisher on end phase will die despite being unaffected by activated effects, you are correct. Why? The reason this works is because Mirror Jade's activated effect was during the battle phase. It activated and it resolved successfully. What we do in the end phase is not activate Mirror Jade again to wipe the board. We are simply finishing resolving an effect that already activated in 2 phases ago. So this is kind of a cool way to get over Towers monsters a lot of the time. And Psychic End Punisher will actually die on the end phase, which is pretty cool. That's a neat thing to keep in mind. Okay, and the last question here. We're going to assume you also control a fusion summoned Mirror Jade, and your opponent controls an SP Little Knight. So, on our turn, we activate Mirror Jade and send Albion for cost to banish a card on the field. Our opponent responds with SP Little Knight targeting herself and Mirror Jade to banish them until the end phase. So that's fine. These two are banished until the end phase. Mirror Jade doesn't have anything to banish. That's fine. On the next chain, branded player activates Mirror Jade's board wipe effect. No response. It resolves successfully. That's fine. We go to the end phase here. Branded player, it is their turn, so they have priority during the end phase. First, we resolve Albion in the graveyard. We can grab Branded Fusion to hand, whatever. That part doesn't matter. But now, we have two effects that need to finish resolving. And this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while, because I think end phase stuff is not talked about enough, especially in Branded, because we call it the main phase 3. You should know how this stuff works. So, Branded player says, would you like to resolve SP Little Knight first? The opponent has the option to, but they say, no, your turn player, you resolve Mirror Jade first. Who's correct? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there isn't really a correct player or an incorrect player here. Technically, both versions of this are legal to resolve. There's no cheating involved in what I'm about to show you. If the branded player passes priority here to the opponent, and they decide to resolve SP first, they can do that. That is legal. So SP will come back, Mirror Jade will come back. Then priority is passed back to the turn player, the branded player, and now they can say, okay, we will now resolve Mirror Jade, and SP will be destroyed. However, if you are not turn player, you don't have to resolve your stuff first if you don't want to. So they can go back and forth all day, passing priority, but eventually, if both players know how the end phase works, the opponent sort of wins this argument. They can say, you are turn player, you have to resolve your effects first. I'm not going to do it. And eventually, the turn player is just going to have to be like, all right, I'll resolve Mirror Jade first. Mirror Jade will wipe the field with nothing on it. Then SP will resolve because the branded player has nothing left to activate or resolve. And both monsters will return to their respective fields before passing to our opponent. Okay, so that was a bit of a mouthful. And just real quick to reiterate, if it was the opponent's turn here and the same situation was happening, the opponent has the option to say, would you like to resolve Mirror Jade first? Or they can say, I'm passing priority to you in the end phase. The branded player, if it's not their turn, they don't have to resolve Mirror Jade when the opponent passes priority back. You can say, you are turn player, you resolve your effects first. And if you both know how the rules work, the turn player over here will say, all right, that's fine, resolve SP. Both monsters will come back. And then the branded player, now with priority again, can resolve Mirror Jade and pop SP Little Knight. Okay, so if I counted correctly, that was our 10 questions. So let me know how you did. Let me know how you enjoyed this sort of video. And if you learned something and all that sort of stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and take care.